Did you know your health is your greatest asset and the key to lasting success? Welcome to Tiger Health Assessment's Optimal Health Weekly Show, where we help driven professionals, CEOs, and entrepreneurs like you take control of your health and unlock peak performance. Hosted by the founder of Tiger Health Assessment, Steve Adams, this podcast is your guide to optimal health through the power of functional medicine and preventative concierge care. Each week, we'll bring you a dynamic mix of expert interviews and solo episodes with actionable insights tailored to your busy, high-achieving lifestyle. Together, we'll explore strategies to enhance your health, optimize your performance, and redefine what success looks like. Subscribe now, and together we'll enhance your health, optimize your performance, and redefine success.
Hi, Steve here from Tiger Medical Institute. We continue on with our next interview of Dr. Jeremy Stich as we continue our summit on the future of precision personalized medicine. Dr. Jeremy Stich received his medical degree from the University of Kentucky. He began his career in emergency medicine. It was there that Dr. Stich realized the impact of a more proactive approach to healthcare, which led him to form direct care practices and eventually co-found a genetics-based medical company. His medical and personal journey led him to bioenergetics, as he witnessed undeniable outcomes for many patients, including his own daughter. Dr. Stich is now passionate about bringing bioenergetics to patients, practitioners, and the scientific community. He currently serves as Chief Medical Officer of XBO Health. Dr. Jeremy, welcome to the summit.
Hey, so thanks, Steve. I appreciate it, man. It's a mouthful.
That's all right, though. I mean, you have a very interesting background, and you have this philosophy to practicing medicine and to care that we want to unpack. But let's talk just a little bit about your background and kind of, how you arrived to this point. Maybe some of the companies, because there's some companies that I think a lot of people have heard of that you've been involved in.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate the availability and time and the opportunity to speak, man. It's great to share knowledge. It's great to be part of a brotherhood. And you and I have been friends for a while, so this is cool.
Yeah, you bet.
Is my sound okay, by the way? I've got a little bit of background noise. Okay, cool.
Your sound's good. Yeah, just kind of walk people through your background a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So, I didn't know I was going to go into medicine at first. I kind of had this calling, felt the calling, went to med school, did kind of what everybody does, right? We have the passion. I wanted to help people. I had no idea what the hell that actually meant. So I had to unpack that and really kind of get to it, which is a whole other part of the journey. But I landed in a specialty called triple board, which is like psych, child psych, and peds combined. There's not very many specialties. Freaking loved it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized a lot of that was just kind of pushing prescriptions. So by the end of it, I had a great mentor who didn't do that.
Yep.
And towards the end of it, I was like, this is not me. I went back and did emergency medicine, and I just kind of loved the thrill.
Yeah. Not knowing what you're going to see day to day.
Yeah, it's one of these few bastions left where you can really practice to use your intuition and be creative and make the best of, sometimes crummy scenarios. So I love that. I thought it was really, really fun. But as there's always a but, right? You realize pretty quickly that this was the safety net of the medical system. And without that, we saw so many patients who were like, my doctor told me to come here. I couldn't get in for 4 weeks, or I had this or I had that. And I was told to come here. My labs were abnormal. I was told to come here. And you realize pretty quickly that if you pull that net out from that system, there's nothing to catch a lot of these folks. Right. And the pattern started becoming really obvious, right? You see folks who are just kind of circling, and we would do often, heroic measures, keep them alive, rescue them, do whatever. But it wasn't really enough to get them out of that loop, out of the swirl, what I call the death swirl, right? It's you're literally circling the drain and going down, and you've got to have a holistic, really, really thoughtful, personalized approach to get somebody out of that.
Yeah. And is that what led you to go that direction with your life and your career?
Yeah, totally. At first, I've always been entrepreneurial. I always it wasn't good enough what we were doing. So I was always looking to create something new. And a couple of buddies were like, hey, there's this practice called direct primary care. It's a style of medicine where it's a membership base, like 50 to $100 a month. And there's nobody in our area doing it. In fact, there was like very, very few at that time east of the Mississippi.
Yep.
So I went out and visited some of those practices. I know you're familiar with the space,
Yep.
and we started a couple, and it was cool. It was a faster wheel.
Yeah. And it enabled you to do medicine the way you wanted to do it.
It did, yeah, it did. But it was still sick here, and that's the one
Yep.
thing. Like, I had to get proactive, and we built those practices. We built up the practice census to a couple thousand people. Um, had this idea of like franchising it, and creating the box, but it was just still not quite what I was looking for. So I pulled in some friends of mine were starting a genetics company. There wasn't an organizing officer. That was Wild Health, probably one of the companies you're alluding to.
Yep.
And I joined that, basically sold my practices, joined that, and took this like cool concept, and we organized it in a way that made it really deliverable. So we created systems. We had health coaches, we had doctors, and we'd walk people down this journey, and it was all genetics based.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then how did you oh, were you done? I want to make sure I'm not cutting you off.
It's okay. I don't want to talk too much about it, but it was that leap, looking at the genetics and realizing, you know, there it wasn't really the genetics that was healing people. We had a little bit of knowledge there,
Yeah.
but it opened up Pandora's box of epigenetics. What regulates the genes, what turns them on and turns them off, and I became like really good at helping people methylate and not methylate or acetylate or whatever it was that what effectively was on and off switches to these genes.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And that, I think that was really the key, having the knowledge, doing the precision medicine, seeing these like massive workups. We would test the wazoo out of people, 30 to $50,000 worth of testing a year.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and the beautiful thing about it was that everybody was so compliant. Everybody's super motivated. There's like professional athletes and high-powered executives and people who wanted to get the next edge. So
Right.
the learning that happened there, the relationships were phenomenal. They allowed me to really see like what was making the impact, and I realized pretty quickly it was the person's individual decision making, their
Wow.
lifestyle.
Yep.
It was
Right.
those kind of things, these environmental patterns. And I remember so vividly this one story. There's a woman, she's since become a good friend of mine. At that point, she was a patient, and she went on this spiritual journey. And for the life of us, we had been working on like these two labs, these two abnormalities that we just couldn't fix.
Yep.
And one of them was a methylation marker, and the other was an inflammation marker. Didn't have any inflammatory, so autoimmune markers is what she thought, but she actually didn't.
Yep.
So she goes on the spiritual journey, Steve, and she comes back and she's like bright, and she's got like big smiles and rosy cheeks. Her complexion looks different.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, that's cool. But
Let me
wait,
guess. Yeah.
yeah, they got better. Both of
Yeah.
them.
Yep. Yep.
Just like
Wow.
that within a
Wow.
week,
Just for
you
their
know?
own work. Right.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
was this
yeah.
was this the precursor to the bioenergetics work?
It was, it was like bioenergetics is sort of, I don't actually even advise for that company anymore. We finished that work
Sure.
and got them across the line. Um, but bioenergetics is really like a subset of what's called biophysics.
Okay.
And biophysics is the study of how energy basically manifests into matter. And we know that modern physics, so a brief history lesson on medicine, right? 150 years of biochemistry, as like biochemistry drives everything, which is the equivalent of like billiard balls bouncing off of each other.
Yep. Okay.
And up to this point, it was really like 1920s, 1930s where quantum physics came onto the scene. We thought that drove everything. Everything was really, really mechanical in nature. But the premise of physics at that point, and Einstein's brilliant equals MC squared, is that actually like it's not.
Yeah.
You know, it's really energy creates matter, not the other way around. But we've got industries that are based on biochemistry that are, you know, decades old. So
Right.
like all of the care, all of the protocols, all of the studies, they take a while to replicate.
Yeah.
And we're just now kind of moving into that biophysics era. So modern medicine, modern health looks really different, right? The difference between a CT scan or an X-ray and an MRI is night and day. And that's sort of an
Okay.
easy example to think of like a chemistry versus a physics-based approach, where you're looking at resonance and shaking hydrogen ions with no radiation in an MRI, and you're just looking at like hard matter and penetration through that matter with an X-ray with a
Yep.
CT scanner, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got into this, and there was a lot of personal stories, a lot of really like eye-opening, amazing things that I saw where the paradigm of biochemistry just didn't make sense anymore. Like I couldn't look at some of the things I witnessed even with my own daughter, um, like nerves coming back online, and be like, yeah, that is how it happens because there's no explanation, right? It was the
Yeah.
physics, the wave-based stuff, and the energetics that really kind of helped turn those systems on.
Okay.
And the key was realizing, like, putting together those experiences, watching all these patients have these eye-opening experiences, work on their personal relationships, work on all this other stuff. And I was here like chipping away, kind of like trying to, carve a statue out of marble, just a little piece at a time at the matter. And then they went start working on their environment and their relationships and how they viewed themselves. And they make these watershed changes.
Wow.
And,
Yeah.
and that's where kind of it all clicked together. It's like, you can't really just look at the body. You can't really just look at the environment or the energy or who you are. You have to put the three of them together,
Yeah.
which is sort of where my practice philosophy evolved from.
Well, we've got 13 minutes, and I want to make sure you get a chance to really lay these three out. Can you lay out the three, pillars, if you will, of your approach now using bioenergetics?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Like the simplest way to think of it is it boiled it down to these three concepts of first, second, and third principles.
Okay.
So if you're going to look at a system, like a complex system like a human body, which there's really nothing that we make
Super
that's even
fine.
close to that complexity as
Right.
humans, right?
Right.
Um, and we have to think about like how those different parts of that work together. And you essentially have like three things. You have, we'll call first your body. That's the simplest one to understand. It's the material body. Once things have already manifested, once you are who you are, you form from a embryo to an adult and all the life experiences that have happened. That's your body.
Mhm.
The second is the energy and the environment around you, the relationships, the community, the inputs. So all the different, they're technically called fields. You walk outside, you feel light, that's a field.
Uh-huh.
Live under a power line, that's a field. You walk into an X-ray, that's a field. Like those things are the energies, and those are constantly interacting, feeding back, informing your body how to work, right?
Mhm.
And then the third one is the most complicated, which is your beingness. It's who you are. I call it your consciousness. Some people would call it your soul, your spirit. It goes by a lot of names. Um, but it's fundamentally how we see ourselves. It's this internal dialogue with who we are,
Wow.
the stories that we tell ourselves. And and the interesting part of that one is that it's constantly sending signals. It's constantly rewiring your nervous
Wow.
system. So I explained it in terms of the easiest ways to understand it, but the way that our body actually works is actually quite the opposite. So the first principle is our consciousness and our beingness.
Yeah. Right.
The second is the energy and the environment. And then the third is the body. So by the time like we are who we are, you've had, you know, days to decades of information and interaction and programming in your nervous system that make your body work the unique way that it works today.
Yeah. So is the way people show up today with their health a reflection then of those first two principles?
By and large, it is. And
Yeah.
that's what you realize. You start doing the research on epigenetics, and there's just really mysterious concepts that simply cannot be explained by biochemistry alone. Like
Wow.
take meditation, for instance, right?
Yep.
I was super allopathic when I started this journey. I did not meditate. I've been a
Yep.
spiritual person my whole life. My spirituality was a religion before, and now it's just more holistic. But it's I never meditated, right? I started looking at the mindfulness based research. I started looking at the epigenetics, and there were some studies that started showing something as little as meditating each day would upregulate 500 different genes.
It's incredible. It's like 1,400 studies that support it.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, isn't it?
I know it is. And I'm sorry, I'm jumping in on you. If you have a lot of noise going on at a subconscious level in your beingness and your spirit, if you will, your consciousness, that can trip you into sympathetic or that stress response, right? And then that does all kinds of bad things to us.
You're totally right. So if we think of it in terms of principles, you've got first, second, third, right? But let's
Yep.
just map this out.
Okay.
This is a bit grotesque, Steve, so bear with me on the explanation. But let's
All
just say,
good.
hypothetically, you take your brain and you take your spinal cord and then all the nerves, and you were to just fillet them open, right? And spread them
Yep.
out. Boom. That looks a lot like a giant antenna.
Wow.
If we
Yeah.
think about how antennas work, right? Think about it, just
Makes
like,
sense.
remember the
Yeah.
old school antenna. You got your arms, you got your legs, and all those little nerve endings just reaching out. That's exactly how it works. So your brain in that analogy is the processor, right? Your mind is the software, your brain is the processor,
Yep.
and your nervous system is in charge of doing exactly what an antenna does. A lot of people don't realize, but an antenna both sends and receives information.
Yeah. Wow. That's
So,
a great analogy.
well, it's you realize really quickly this, it has to work like this. It's the only way that it makes sense. And when you start seeing these changes, when people would put in the hard individual personal work, and I'm sitting here like just working with them like crazy, trying to drive 5 or 6 habits that are just, yeah, they're moving the needle, they're helpful, but not nearly as helpful as like when they change, they forgive their sister who they had a
Yeah.
lifelong
Right.
feud with, or they like stop working 70 hours a week and like focus on their family, and then all of a sudden like the inflammation goes away.
So when you put the flesh back on, if you fix the antenna, what they're sending and receiving and how they're perceiving what they receive, then the flesh gets better in a sense.
Yeah, totally. And
Yeah.
we had some cool experiences. I mean, it's probably too much to go into, but like one of the technologies that I've developed with Ammortal, we took this like very, very cool analog. It's like a multifocal pulsed electromagnetic wave therapy. And we would actually like take the guts of that and work. My partner and I would work on people like hands on, like literally put your hands on people with these electromagnetic waves.
Oh, wow.
And they'd start having crazy experiences that are common in somatic workers and massage therapists, like, but I didn't know about them as a doctor. But you
Right.
touch somebody's shoulder and they'd like just start crying and talk about like it's never been touched in a non-sexual way by a man, and you're like, holy crap, like I don't know what to do with this, there's nothing in my training.
Wow. Yeah.
Then they function differently because that nervous system all of a sudden releases that tension, right? And it's literally like cleaning off, go back to the analogy, it's like cleaning the dirt off the antenna. All we
Wow.
did was apply a little bit of energy, a little bit of
Right.
electromagnetism to the right spot, and all of a sudden, like, boom, it jumps back on.
So when you work with people, you apply this, how do you do that? Like, what's a process somebody would go through if they were to work with you, Dr. Jeremy?
That's just really so. I kind of similar. Our clientele look fairly similar. Like the folks that I work with, it's usually a fairly intense one-on-one type of relationship. Most of
Yep.
my time is spent as like a medical director or an advisor, or like a chief medical officer in that capacity, just because it's impossible to do that at scale one on one.
Right.
So for the technology that kind of what we were alluding to, like actually one of the companies we put it into this really, really fancy bed. And that's, version one of the tech. That's called
Yep.
Ammortal, Ammortal.
Got it.
And we put that with a bunch of other modalities with guided meditation and really like therapeutic, thoughtful, custom music. And you just kind of like go into this meditative state and it
Okay.
hits you with
Got it.
all these different fields, right? So
Yep.
that's one way.
Yep.
And then individually, like we'll do the deep dive and we kind of think about the body and the mind and the consciousness as this interacting three entities that you have to address all three. So, a lot of my clients are those like high powered executives, super motivated athletes, whatever, who are willing to do the hard work, and we'll start looking at how does their mindset tie to their labs.
Yeah. Right.
I almost always start at the body level and the chemistries and doing a big workup just so we're looking and seeing like what's the state of your body and your health today.
Right. Yep.
Right. And then there's practices that we'll recommend through some of the
Or
various practices. And then we'll kind of tie it into how they think about themselves. I was messaging with one of my friends and patients this morning about this whole idea. Like the guy's super, super successful, growing his business. He got to the $500 million point and it's a block. Like absolutely won't let go. And what does his lab show? Like subclinical autoimmune disease doesn't make sense. The numbers are like, they don't follow a specific category, and it all has to do with this kind of like self-sabotage of like letting go. When you get to that level, you can't micromanage anymore.
Nope. Right. He's got to reinvent himself. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that created a ceiling for him. And we tie those things. So, how are the ways we can support him? And we kind of go into a lot of crazy stuff. Like we'll do kind of being therapy, we'll do the personalized work, we'll do the repeat testing. It's that kind of work that I do with folks. It's not, again, super scalable, but I've got a small practice in Kentucky where my partner and I work together. And then I do a lot of medical directorships where I'm, focusing on delivering that.
Can people work with you virtually too, Jeremy, or not?
Yeah, for sure. I'm licensed in most states. Yeah.
Okay. Well, how do people get a hold of you? Like if they want to learn about working with you or about Ammortal, how would they find these things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the ones that are like ready to scale and do today, we have a company called Live, LYV. We deliver personalized kind of integrative and functional care through that. For the technology, Ammortal.com. It's super simple. It's like immortal spelled incorrectly. Ammortal.
And then live is lyv.com.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Any last words? Go ahead. We got a minute left, so go ahead.
I was just gonna say the other stuff. It's really kind of by referral. I kind of work with the folks who just because my time when I'm not doing the other stuff is super limited. But yeah.
No problem. They know if they get a hold of me, I can refer them to you too. So.
It's probably a safe bet.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, thank you for joining us for the summit.
Man, thanks for what you're doing. It's super cool. You've got a brilliant business mind, and you're one of the rare individuals I've seen who's like successfully turned the health model into a viable business. And I've seen your evolution and witnessed it over time. It's fun to watch.
Thank you. Well, it's been mostly my own journey of getting me better. And then I try to apply it to the business and share it with others. And, we've landed on a core model at Tiger Medical where it's a narrow focus on metabolic health, and we get people a lot better. And then it enables them to work with other folks to go to that next level and more of these specialty areas like what you're talking about. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Oh, that's cool. To each his own. We got to find each other where we are and help support each other. So that's awesome.
I agree. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Steve Adams here from Tiger Health Assessment, talking about the True Health Assessment. What if you could safeguard not just your health, but the well-being of your entire family? With the True Health Assessment from Tiger Health, you can. Our comprehensive blood screening identifies hidden risk before they become major issues. Our elite team of Mayo Clinic trained and naturopathic physicians then create a customized plan to optimize your health for years to come. When you prioritize your wellness, you ensure you can be fully present for the people you love most. Don't let preventable issues cut that time short. For less than the cost of a daily latte, you can gain peace of mind and a clear path to sustained vitality. Protect your future and your family's future with True Health Assessment from Tiger Health at thetruehealthassessment.com. Again, that's at thetruehealthassessment.com.